In this video, I'm going to be making a tier list on all of the bosses in Ark Survival Evolved. First, we have the Broodmother coming in at C tier. This one is a pretty good boss fight, but it's just pretty average, and there's not really too much to it. You just bring an army and then kill it pretty quickly. Then we have the Megapithecus, which I'm going to put at D tier. It's just a really boring boss fight because it's extremely easy. And I'm not just ranking these on whether they're hard or easy, but this one is like so easy that's not like any challenge or anything to it. You kind of just bring your army and then you get it done super quickly in like 2 seconds and then you're done. Then we have the dragon, which has a little bit more challenge to it, except for it's way bigger. It's a cool dragon. The arena is really cool. It's one of my favorite arenas in the entire game. Overall, I think out of the 3 guardians on the island, this one is definitely my favorite. And then we have the Overseer, which is easily going at S tier. This is one of my favorite boss fights in the entire game. Starts out with the tech cave and then goes to the observation deck. And once you go through all of that, you go in and you get this cool intro sequence, and then you've got to fight its army as well as the Overseer itself, which the Overseer then turns into 3 different versions of the island bosses. Overall, this is just a really cool boss fight and a really fun ending to the island. And then at D tier, we have the Manticore. So the Manticore is the boss for Scorched Earth, and it's not really that great of a boss. I mean, it's cool looking and stuff, but the boss fight itself is pretty lackluster. I mean, you just get a T-Rex army and you can easily kill this thing without even having to try. So, I mean, for that reason, it's going to be a D tier. And then we have Rockwell, which is going to be in the S tier. This one is a really challenging one, and it's really fun as well. You get to go knocking out the tentacles with, usually you could use a shotgun. I mean, you could use a creature, but the shotgun's the best method. You go around destroying those tentacles, and then its heart opens up, and then you attack it. This one's actually pretty unique. Instead of just bringing an army of dinos to gnaw at it without even having to try, this one you actually have to think in order to beat it, and it's really fun. Then we have the Desert Titan, which is going to be in the D tier, but I actually think it should be C tier, so I think I'm going to move it up there, so just pretend it's in C tier. I already made the list. But anyway, so basically the Desert Titan is the flying creature you can't land, so you have to fight it in the sky, which is a pretty cool and unique thing. It's basically you have to get an army of flyers to take this thing down. Overall, it's not too hard. The Titans aren't the hardest thing because they're world bosses, so you can pretty much bring whatever you want and kill it pretty quickly, but it is a pretty cool boss fight. And then we have the Ice Titan, which is coming in at the C tier. This one's pretty fun. This is another world boss, so that does make it a little bit easier, but it's still got some challenge because the Ice Titan is really strong. It's got some cool abilities. I think it is the coolest Titan and also the coolest looking Titan, but that's pretty much it. But that's why that's going to be in the C tier. And then finally we have the Forest Titan at C tier. This one is a pretty fun one to fight as well. It's obviously different from the other 2 Titans. It has a lot more health, it's a lot more tankier, but it's got some pretty cool abilities like being able to wrap you up with trees. So it has probably one of the most difficult to fight out of all 3 Titans, but this one is pretty fun to fight as well. And then we have the King Titan, which is going to be in the A tier. This one's really fun to fight. It's basically like fighting Godzilla in a huge open arena where you can bring an entire army of creatures. And then once you get to the alpha version, you can literally get inside of the Mega Mech, which is the same size as it, and fight it. You can also tame the Titans to fight along with it. Overall, this was just a really fun one. It does seem to be a bit glitchy though, which is why I have it at A tier, because it can be a little bit weird or funky sometimes trying to fight this thing since it is such a huge creature in an open area. But other than that, it is a really cool boss fight. And then we have Modair, which is going to be at C tier. This was the first and only underwater boss, and it's a pretty unique fight because, of course, it is the only underwater boss. But this one is pretty fun. You basically just get an army, attack it, and then it has got its minions. You take down the minions, and then it pops out and you fight it. It's a pretty fun boss fight, but it's not the greatest boss fight. Then we have the Master Controller fight, which is going to be the S tier. This is one of my favorite fights in the entire game, because this one you actually have to do stuff instead of just sitting on the back of a dinosaur. You got to run around and collect these like key things in order to open up the next area of the boss fight. And while there's all kinds of creatures trying to attack you, you got like a T-Rex army attacking them, and you got to bring guns and all that stuff, and it's just really fun to mess with and do this boss. It is pretty hard as well, but it is fun. And then we have Rockwell Prime, which I'm going to also be putting in the S tier. This is a really fun boss fight as well. It's the ending to Genesis Part 2 and the end of the game, and it is pretty cool. You got to take down the tentacles, which will allow you to do his like smaller Rockwell versions. Once you take out those, it will form into the actual version of Rockwell, and then you fight him there. This one's pretty fun. It's not super difficult. It does have some challenge to it, but this one is a really fun boss fight. Then we have the Ice Deathworm from Ragnarok. This is just a mini boss inside one of the caves, and it is pretty fun, but I'm going to put it in D tier just because, I mean, it's not really a full boss fight. It's kind of just a mini boss fight, but the cave is pretty cool that you go through, but the boss itself is kind of just a reskin of a Deathworm, so. Then we have the Lava Golem mini boss from Ragnarok. This one's going in the C tier. I like this one a bit more because the lava is way cooler. The arena is pretty cool, and you kind of use like rocket launchers and stuff to take this one out as you're like parkouring around the arena. So this one's just a lot more fun to fight than the Ice Deathworm, but it's still a mini boss, so I'm gonna put it in the C tier. Then we have the Crystal Wyvern Queen, which is going to be in the B tier. This was the first custom boss in a custom map. Well, it's not really a custom boss, it's a reskin of the Crystal Wyvern, but it is still really good compared to the bosses we had before this, which were just like 2 bosses in one. But this one itself is pretty cool though. You basically do a bunch of damage to it, and then it flies around, and then you have to do damage to it while it's in the air, and then it will land in its nest, and then you keep repeating that process. It's a pretty good boss fight, but that's why it's in B tier. And then we have the Dinopithecus King, which I'm going to be putting at B tier. This was the second of the custom map, custom bosses. And this one's pretty good, you know. It's one of those ones where you get a bunch of an army to attack it, but it does like jump up on top of cliffs and throw stuff at you, and it's got a new army of like crazy Dinopithecus riding different animals and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun to fight. Then we have the 3 mini bosses on Fjordur, which is first is Bela. I'm going to put it in D tier. And then we have Steinborn, which is probably my favorite of them. We're going to put in C tier. And then after that, we have the Hadean Skull, which I'm going to put in D tier as well. And then we have Fenrir Sulfur, which is the newest boss added and the last boss that will be added to Arc. This one is definitely a fun one. It's a gigantic Fenrir that's got some really cool and unique abilities compared to some of the other bosses in this game. And overall, this one's pretty fun, and it's got a pretty good challenge as well. So that is all of the bosses and Arc Survival Evolved on a tier list. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. The link's in the description. Thanks for watching, and bye.